Well, I think it's bang on 2 o'clock, so I think we might start. Thanks everyone for joining this webinar from CHASNZ. My name is Chris Alderson. I'm the Chief Executive at Construction Health and Safety NZ, or CHASNZ or CHASNZ. We haven't quite worked out how to say it yet. And with me is...
Yeah, hi, I'm Jon Harper-Slade. I'm the GM for Skills and Competency at CHASNZ, or CHASNZ. We haven't figured it out yet.
We'll work it out one day.
Yeah. Well, maybe what you can do is in the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen is if you've got suggestion for what we call it and how we say it, then let us know.
Yeah, or maybe not. Anyway, yeah, as Jon said, look, there is some way of providing some feedback throughout this webinar. So there's a Q&A button at the bottom. If you do put questions in there, look, we're delighted to get questions. We might not answer them straight away, more at the end of the session. There's also a little poll in there as well. We've asked a simple question more around how many pre-quals do you currently do, so we're interested in that. But what we might do now is just get into it. So, look, we just wanted to sort of take around about half an hour, maybe 40 minutes of your time, talking about a project that we were asked to undertake by the industry. We have been running some roadshows in Auckland, Christchurch and Wellington. So we've talked well over 200 people so far around this, and we are interested in more feedback. So that's the first point. I'd also just like to give you a quick briefing on CHASNZ itself before we get into the Tōtika side, which won't take long because I realise that some of you might not know who we are or where we've come from. So, Jon, if you take us through to the next slide. Look, CHASNZ is a relatively new organisation. We're around about 12 months old, and we're a charitable trust, so we're a not-for-profit. And we're also a non-government organisation as well. So we sit somewhere between the regulator, between WorkSafe and ACC and the industry. And like in other high-risk industries, WorkSafe asks that independent bodies get set up to coordinate health and safety across those industries. So there's a similar body to CHASNZ in forestry called FISC, in agriculture called LSAG, and there's a new body being stood up in food and grocery as well, which is great. So look, our job is to really advocate on behalf of the industry and to work with government, to work with industry, and to do projects on behalf of all parties that it doesn't make sense for individual organisations to do by themselves. And we're also a standard setter, so when the industry looks to set standards around health and safety, we can help with that as well. So we have a trust deed, and on my screen is, I'm not going to read all these out, but these are our key industry aspirational goals. So this is where we want the industry to be, and this comes directly from our trust deed. And you know, I'll just pick out some of the highlights there. World-class health and safety performance. What that means is we simply don't want to just follow what Australia, Canada and the UK's done, maybe sometimes 3 years later, around health and safety. We actually want to make a difference and be a little bit disruptive and innovative, as we know a small country can be around this stuff, to take a leap ahead. And the project we're going to talk about today is definitely of that ilk. We also believe that the construction industry, although a really wide industry, if you consider the residential market, vertical construction, civil constructions, tradespeople, engineers and architects, around about 300,000 people we think work in construction in New Zealand. What we've found from a health and safety perspective is there's more similar about those businesses than there are different. So the same things tends to affect businesses and individuals, whether you're working in a small residential site or whether you're working in a site like next door to ours where the Pacific is being built. So we know that, so we believe that by being united and cohesive and working on consistent standards, we can actually make a good start. So look, we do focus on those at risk, and we do want to start promoting better practice as well and create standards and raise standards, which is again why we're talking to you about pre-qualification. We'd also like to see a step change well within 5 years. So we believe, you know, we're 1 year old. If we haven't made a difference within sort of 2 years, then we need to be upping our game. So we believe that, within 5 years, we should really be achieving that sort of world-class view of life. So if you go to the next slide, John. So look, we've got a board. So our board is put together really to reflect the diverse construction industry. So Roger McRae is our chair, our independent chair. So Roger has retired from the CEO of McConnell Dowell and now gives us some of his time. He's passionate about health and safety, and I'm sure many of you will know him. We have the regulator, Nicole, there. So she provides our link into WorkSafe. Francois Barton, he's independent as well. He connects us with the other industries around health and safety. And then we sort of go to the industry itself, where we've got Rick Hurd representing vertical building, Nigel Smith representing residential, Graham Burke looking after tradespeople, Steve Colleen looking after civil construction, and then we start looking at different client groups. So we believe that clients have got a disproportionate effect on the construction supply chain, and that's why we created 2 roles in there for public and private clients. So Shane Ellison is from the public side. He's the CEO of Auckland Transport, and he represents, I guess, municipal government as well as central government. And then Susan Huria is the chair of Ngaitahu Property, and she represents private clients. We have the unions there with Bill. We have professionals being architects, engineers there with Daryl Lee, the MD of Becca. And we also have the training industry there. So we're quite linked with the training industry. So Brett Murray, CEO of SiteSafe, sits on our board, and he represents the whole training industry in terms of trying to raise the capability and consistency over how we're training our people. So as you can see, there's a little diagram there which sort of shows that we have got a strong connection with government. They do support us, and we have connections not only with our own industry through the Construction Industry Council, but also with our sister bodies and other industries. And that's how we organise ourselves. So we have advisory groups that sit right across our board, and our board members are active board members. They don't just do typical director governance. They also put together advisory boards from representation within the different subsections of construction that basically tell us what to do. So before we get into Tōtika, we'll just quickly give you a flavour of some of the other things we're working on at the moment. You may or may not know, but we run the ConstructSafe scheme on behalf of the industry. So we inherited ConstructSafe from the Construction Safety Council, and we're constantly evolving ConstructSafe as well. So we talk to the industry about what they believe people should know around key risks, and we put that in the assessment. And we also develop new assessments. So just recently, for example, we released the Master Electrician's Competency Assessment. We're talking about pre-qualification today. We're also working around predictive analytics. So we believe that we can accumulate some pretty interesting data from across the industry. Obviously, we're not the regulator, so we're a good place to share that data, and we're not a commercial organisation as well, so we're not interested in selling people back their own data. But what we can do is we can accumulate data in a data lake. More details are on our website around that data lake, which is a new project for us, and we believe that with more data we can see some interesting things within health and safety that perhaps we didn't realise currently. We're also working strongly in mental health, so CHASNZ is heading up a mental health and construction strategy. We have our first session imminent in the next week or so on that, and we're also supporting a project in Auckland called Mates in Construction. I might stop there because I'm going to hand over to John, and we're going to talk specifically for why you came on the call today. So I would say that this is one of these projects that through feedback from a number of our advisory groups we were asked to work on. I'd also say that look, this is a true consultation we're going through at the moment, so nothing's set in stone. We have developed a future model for how things might work, but we're very, very open to hearing from the wider industry about how they would like to see things. I'd also like to stress as well that one thing we're not doing is we're not building a new pre-qualification system to just add on top of the existing pre-qualification systems. So that's not our intention at all. We're here to remove cost, we're here to remove complexity and increase the value for all parties. So as a non-for-profit, look, we haven't got a buck to be made here. We're really just making sure that we remove some of the obstacles to good health and safety in New Zealand. So I'll hand over to Jon.
So I thought it'd be useful to just kick off and talk about why we're doing this. And probably before I sort of get into anything that's going on in the slides, I might just share with you a story of kind of what made me sit up and take notice. And this kind of probably goes back a year or so ago. I attended a Civil Contractors New Zealand event down in Wellington and was approached by a fairly angry, upset owner of a small civil construction business, a business employ less than 20 people, as 80% of the businesses in construction do. And, you know, very gruffly asked me when were we going to fix this problem of pre-qualification. And then he went on to really describe what it was like for him. And if I'm being honest, you know, doing the job that I've been doing for the last few years, I probably haven't had the empathy that I should have done and what it's like for small businesses. I'm sure most of you get this, and I didn't at the time, that this chap runs a small business but also works in that business, as a lot of small business owners do. Starts work very early in the day and works through until quite late at night on or around their machinery or pricing up the next job, and normally gets the paperwork business management side in the evening after dinner. So come sort of 7, 8 o'clock at night, they're sort of sitting around the kitchen table talking about the business administration and the financials and whether they've got enough money in the bank to pay their people. And was talking about, you know, the idea for them around pre-qual is that they have to navigate 12 different pre-qualification systems. So that's 12 sets of paperwork they've got to put together, because none of the pre-qualification processes that they're following are the same. None of those 12 systems seem to recognize any of the other ones that they're engaging with. So they're asking for different stuff in a different way. Not only that, but they also come across the problem where they might engage with one pre-qualification process which accepts the evidence they've submitted and they pass through that. And for the next one, they'll fail the process and need to provide different information in a different way. So all of this really was just describing a really, you know, unpleasant situation for a business which has got limited resources, that's trying to survive in what is a difficult industry, and that in the name of health and safety, we're doing this to people. And so really that vindicated the whole idea that this was a project that CHASNZ needed to pick up, and we needed to move on and do something about it. So this is really what we did. So this project really started back in May last year. As the board were put together, we were asked to collaborate with WorkSafe to do some research. And we did some research, and from that we looked around what was happening around pre-qualification in New Zealand, and also looked some further afield overseas to see what was going on. And from what we learned, we put a paper back to the CHASNZ board in September last year, you know, with a concept of how we might develop an idea to fix the pre-qualification problem that we're experiencing. That concept was approved, and in November we brought a consultant to help us do some development work, which was completed in April this year. And the output of that development phase, you can actually see if you go to our website, chasnz.org, and click on the Tōtika page. You can actually download the documents that were put together during this development phase. And what we've really done is created something which I described as a magnitude stronger than a straw man. So something with some thinking, some evidence behind it. The consultants did significant amounts of research into how we might propose, how we move forwards. And so I'll talk about some of those basic concepts in a moment without going into too much detail. And if you're interested in the detail, you can read up on that. As Chris already pointed out, those development phase documents are up for grabs. We're not positional about what's in any of those documents and can change whatever's in there. And in fact, from the consultation process so far, there are a number of elements of that we are considering adjusting to provide a better and easier to manage system moving forwards. The other thing really just to highlight on what's happened is also in April, as we finished the development phase, the construction accord was signed. If you're not aware of what the construction accord is, it's an agreement between government and business to help provide a better construction industry for New Zealand moving forwards. And there's a number of work streams across a number of areas, and specifically called out in the accord is health and safety. And CHASNZ have got a big role to play in that. And this particular project has been called out as something to achieve as part of that accord work. So how are we proposing to do this? What we're calling Tōtika. And Tōtika is a word that refers generally to things that have been done in the correct way, which is how we came up with that name. As Chris already mentioned, it's not another pre-qualification system. Our job at CHASNZ is not to create more safety clutter, but to try and help remove the proliferation of bureaucracy and clutter and hoops that people have to jump through so that they can concentrate on what's really important, which is the health and safety of their people. And they can only do that if they're actually in their business and looking at their operations, not sitting in offices doing paperwork. And broadly, what we want to achieve from Tōtika is a equitable system that cross-recognizes the things that already happen. So we're not looking to stop or rain on people's parades. We want to standardize what's happening out there, and we want to recognize what's going on so that people don't have to repeat it. So what we are very positional about is the output of this project. And the output of this project is that any contractor or supplier in the construction industry should be able to do a pre-qualification process or assurance process that meets the needs of their business and satisfies the procurer that they've got assurance that they've got a health and safety management program that's appropriate for the thing that they do and the sort of risk that they expose their procurer to. And they just need to do that one thing and it'll be cross-recognized by everyone. That's what we're positional about. How we do that, what the detail is in there is something that we're happy to discuss and happy to develop alongside industry. So what we do know is what we need is these aligned standards. So we need an aligned way in which the pre-qualification providers operate, the commercial ones, and an aligned way for those businesses that choose to do pre-qualification internally, so that we've got some consistency in the way that those schemes or systems are set up. And we also want to make sure that the information that is generated from pre-qualification work, whether that's a commercial or an in-house system, that the information sits in a common portal so that we've got a single searchable database of people who are pre-qualified in construction to make it easier for suppliers and procurers to link up together, to make it easier for people to be able to tender for work. So health and safety pre-qualification isn't the barrier that it currently is for some.
It's probably worth, John, just talking about what we found around how people understand pre-qualification as well, because that was quite interesting.
Yeah. So that's actually a good point. So what we found out up front was that there is also a misunderstanding from procurers of what pre-qualification is for. And what we found is that some procurers, probably well-intended, but probably not so well executed, are using pre-qualification as some form of assurance that, at sort of tender phase. And that's not really what pre-qualification is for. What pre-qualification is for, and excuse the analogy, but it seems to be an effective one, is that pre-qualification is the ticket to the dance, not a guarantee that you're going to get a date. And so therefore, pre-qualification really is the means by which we get assurance that a supplier is engaged with health and safety and has an appropriate management program and is on a journey of improvement. The specifics about how that supplier manages a particular set of risks comes in at that sort of procurement tender stage, when the supplier understands what it is that they're being asked to do and where they to do it, and they get some specific questions about that procurement. And pre-qualification really won't deliver you that level of assurance. So we think that what we know is that some of the inconsistency isn't just from the fact that we've got pre-qualification systems, either internal or commercial, that are not aligned and are inconsistent, but we've also got an inconsistency in the way that procurers apply pre-qualification, and also further an inconsistency in the way that procurers view the risk that they're exposed to by the supplier. So one supplier may be viewed as quite high risk by one procurer, so therefore is asked to do quite a lot of assurance work for pre-qualification, and then for another procurer of their same services, they're viewed as low risk and don't have to do very much. So there's inconsistency in that space too. So these are the things that we're trying to really sort out. So this image that you can see, and do not add too much weight to all of the different arrows or the labels we put on stuff. This is really an illustrative or an illustration of what are 4 key areas that we're really looking at. So the first key area really is around how we standardize pre-qualification suppliers and internal pre-qualification systems. And what we're really interested in that space is that a pre-qualification system or supplier needs to work to a common standard, which is what we call core requirements, which is a standard which really says what is in pre-qualification. And that set of core requirements needs to align and be flexible and scalable based on what sort of business they're dealing with. So a smaller, lower risk business, the core requirements that they need to be assessed on would be much easier to navigate than a very high risk large contractor that would be expected to provide much more information and much more evidence. And so that's a really important part. The second part is the verification process. We want to make sure that pre-qualification providers are treating contractors and suppliers well, that they're communicating with them really well, are really clear about the information they're giving them, are fairly open to accept a range of evidence depending on what the evidence is for, and an understanding that a smaller business will have a lower requirement to document the things that larger businesses do. And we know that one of the problems that we have in pre-qual is that the pre-qual process sometimes asks for documents that businesses actually don't need and use. So therefore documents are created for the purpose of navigating pre-qual but have very other value in that business and are filed away until the next pre-qualification process. So that's the second part, is the verification process. The third part that we're really interested around standardization for pre-qual providers is the competency of the people who are carrying out the assessment, and also the competency of the people who moderate and supervise those people that do assessments. And so in our documents, you'll see what the proposal is around those things. And obviously what we want to do really is to hold pre-qualification providers and schemes to these standards and then get them independently audited to make sure that they are meeting those standards. And if you like, to give them the Tōtika stamp or tick in the box.
So that's not CHASNZ auditing these organisations, that's a truly independent third-party audit.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a truly independent third-party audit by an organisation that's an approved body with CHASNZ. So that's the pre-qual providers bit, the suppliers piece. The other bit, on which is kind of pictured really on the other side, is the idea of cross-recognizing different types of audits that people go through. So what we know from the feedback that we've had across industry is that lots of businesses in construction are already investing in quite a lot of time, trouble and cost around external audit and certification of their management programs. On the whole, most sort of medium and larger size businesses tend to be engaging with the ISO 45001 standard, or are in the process of engaging with that standard. And so really what we're kind of showing here is that we would like to recognize that, and that if a business is already engaging in that process and are able to provide adequate evidence that they're engaged in a good process, that would be accepted instead of a traditional pre-qualification assessment. And that also that we would recognize whatever standards are available for smaller, lower risk businesses such as Safe Plus and QSafe. So that's the other bit about cross-recognition of assessment. The bit really at the bottom of this is that common area of or picture of risk. And this is something that we're going to need to work really closely with industry and the pre-qualification providers to make sure that we do this really well. And that's how do we categorize contractors so that we understand, thinking about those quantum of things that feature with contractor operation, which is their size, their primary work activities, as well as their sort of size of projects that they're engaging with, gives us a quantum of risk. And so what we want to be able to do is very sensibly take a business and say that you're either a low, medium, or high risk type supplier to clients, and then therefore show that this is the route that you need to take, either through cross-recognition of a pre-qualification system or cross-recognition of an audit. And that would then fall into the fourth thing, which is that once you've gone through the process that is best for your business, that your pre-qualification status ends up in a portal that's easily accessible. So that's really the fourth piece, is the information sharing from the pre-qualification providers and the auditors, so that we can show all the buyers and construction people's pre-qualification status.
So I think you've talked about some of the main points there to achieve the outcome we want to achieve, which is people do a pre-qualification exercise once and do it well, versus multiple times with variable levels of achievement or quality. We need basically to get a common view from clients or buyers of construction services on risk. We need to have a standard to act as a reference point. And we know that not every pre-qual will be the same, but it's a reference point standard. Then we can actually say, well, that's a gold, or that's a silver, or a bronze pre-qual, or whatever terminology we use. And that might be appropriate for high risk, medium risk, low risk type operations. So if we get that, and then we've got an independent check, a party checking, then we can actually get clients to say, hey, we can cross-recognise other people's pre-quals who aren't necessarily the people we've contracted with, or the ones they've done themselves. Right?
Agreed.
So that's the real objective of what we're trying to do here. I mean, one other interesting feature here is when we took on this piece of work, we were given some funding by WorkSafe to do it, and their one stipulation was make sure that we don't just design this for construction, because they realised that a lot of clients out there do use contractors and suppliers that do more than just construction services. If you think about energy and utilities, for example, they've got a whole lot of other things as well. So I don't believe at the moment there's anything in there that's so construction specific it won't be picked up by other industries eventually.
No, that's absolutely right, Chris. So the idea really around developing core requirements, and when you look at the documents, you'll see that we've got some questionnaires in there. What you will see is that we've just updated one of the documents to include a small businesses questionnaire. The intent is not to provide a questionnaire that everyone needs to use. The reason why we've developed those questionnaires is to provide an example of what they would look like that meet those differing core requirements for low, medium, and high risk suppliers. And that work still needs to be worked up. And so to make sure that we pick the best way of doing this and the most desirable way of doing this, that's really important. So yeah, so broadly, we've got a measurement tool for the suppliers, and you can see there that we're looking at sort of a gold, silver, bronze, or a associate, standard, and plus type supplier or system grading. What we want to make sure that in the contractor categorization, that this isn't about one contractor is better than another. This is just accepting that different suppliers represent different types of levels of risk to their buyers, and so we just want to make sure that we file people in the correct basket, so it's really easy for those businesses to understand what they need, and easy for the buyers to understand what it is they've done, so that we can get some common assurance. I think it's probably worthwhile just talking about some of the frequently asked questions that we've had already. So a common one, because as you're probably aware, we recently did a roadshow and collected some feedback, and one of the frequently asked questions, Chris, was around how will we get buy-in for this? Do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously this thing won't work if clients at the end of the day refuse to recognise or cross-recognise other people's systems. If they believe that their business is so individual that only their selected pre-qual will work for them. Look, we're working with clients. So as Jon said, the development group behind this project was client-driven. So I had a lot of large organisations on there, including some of the largest in New Zealand, both from government and private side. We also use the advisory groups I referenced earlier, who have a lot of the major buyers of construction on them to gather their support. So look, we can't sign on the line for them, but we believe we're doing everything we can to bring them along. And of course, once this thing gets critical mass as well, it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, that's good.
Is that the last slide, Jon? Yes, so really, look, before we'll just open up to questions if there are any. We'd really like you to go onto our website as well, and perhaps Jon you could probably even show us the website, couldn't you, after this? So our website's pretty easy to get to, www.CHASNZ.org, and on there, this is part of the page there. You'll see that there are some documents there for further reading. So by all means, this is all publicly available. And there is some useful stuff in there as well. So if you're currently doing your own pre-qualification internally, we've actually got the questionnaires on there, which might be useful for some people to download and have a look at compared to what they're doing now. So we also have an area for feedback as well. So we really value the feedback from the industry. We need the support, and we need your support. We also need to hear things perhaps that we haven't thought about as well that we need to take into consideration, because we know we won't get it 100% right, but we're going to try as much as possible. So again, this is an opportunity for us to engage. We have a couple of questions here. What's the first one, Jon?
So when is Workface going to pull their finger out and start a prosecution against an officer? Surely it must be time with construction fatalities going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Well, of course, we can't speak for WorkSafe. We can definitely understand the sentiment, though. I believe that, you know, if you follow things in Australia, it's certainly heating up over there, and I can only presume that, you know, given the right circumstances, we'll see one here as well. Have there been any officer? There must have been an officer prosecution in New Zealand.
Not that I'm aware of.
Isn't that right? Okay. Yep. Good point.
With the board members, why is there no connection with health and safety consultants?
So health and safety consultants, I guess, we work with Mike O'Brien and Philip Aldridge pretty closely. So our remit isn't health and safety consultants itself, it's the construction industry first and foremost. So rather than setting up health and safety consultants in construction, we think it's probably far more beneficial to have CHASNZ, Health and Safety Association in New Zealand, in an association with them and work closely with them. So Jon, you're actually an assessor on the CHASNZ panel, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, yeah. And you know, one of the things that we're looking to do with our Construct Safe scheme is provide a professional's endorsement for health and safety practitioners and professionals that work in construction. So the idea there is that we can lean on the professional standards that CHASNZ give us and CHASNZ membership organisations give us for those who are technicians in those professions, and just check that and provide a way for professionals to measure them against what's required of a health and safety practitioner in construction, to give them a bit of an idea about whether they meet the standard or whether they need to do some more development work to become useful or more useful in construction. So there is a link there between consultants and practitioners with CHASNZ through Construct Safe, and as I say, we've got very long, strong links with CHASNZ, so we're working closely. What we're trying not to do is create new things for the sake of it. So where great things like the CHASNZ register, where great things like NZISM membership levels already exist, we just want to lean and point to those. So that's really what we're doing.
Just see a question there from Rob. Hi, Rob. How did the consultation with the pre-qualification suppliers go? Were there any specific points of feedback that altered the approach? The first group we went out to when we got to a reasonable state were the pre-qualification suppliers. So we actually talked to them over a month ago now, actually 6 weeks ago around this, because obviously they're a key part of the system as well. So we're talking about the commercial health and safety providers now, of which there's about 5 or 6 in New Zealand that we know of, and growing every day. So I think look, we've had some great discussions with them. There have been some points of concern or question, particularly around, I guess, separating potentially the relationship between client buyers and the pre-quals. So some of the pre-quals are very customer-driven anyway, and we've got no intention of undoing something that people have worked very hard to do. So that would be one of the major feedbacks. And I think around that information sharing, we don't want to become another layer in the onion between clients and pre-qual, but we do believe that there should be one common place for sharing information. So it might be that we just have to make sure that the information we do share is quite minimal, so it gives people a start to make sure that people know that in the Taranaki, if they're looking for plumbers, that these are the list of plumbers that have all been pre-qualified by these organisations, and then it stops there. So that would be our involvement. So that wasn't intent originally how we thought things would go, but I think that's still going to achieve the same output that we need.
Yeah.
So I think that I would say that the majority of pre-qual organisations so far, the response has been positive, in particular around having a third-party audit, raising the standard, and like any business, all they really want is a level playing field. Which I think we can achieve. Susan here has written, do we believe the construction accord can actually achieve any meaningful change? So I think that there's an opportunity there that's been presented under this government, which I don't think we've had before. So I think that we've got to go into it optimistically, that there will be change. So we've got a government that's ready to listen. I think, though, that now that we've been given the opportunity or the open door, that it's really going to come down to a lot of people's voluntary discretionary effort across the industry to actually make sure that change is effective. So my hope in that is that we are a bit disruptive, that we call out the big elephants in the room, and that we really get those things on the table for government and for industry to talk through. Take the next one, John.
So the next one's from Greg. Hi, Greg. Have we got to a point of engaging with existing pre-qual providers, ISNet, Impact, SHE, etc., and have they bought into it? So the short answer is yes. So as Chris mentioned, about 6 weeks ago, we had an industry briefing with the pre-qualification providers specifically, and gave them the information broadly, what we've just presented on this webinar. And as we mentioned, the feedback, so we've had one-on-one meetings with pre-qualification providers, and a number of them have provided us with some written submissions as well. It's actually been a really great process, and the pre-qualification providers have been brilliant at helping us work up some of the ideas that the development phase has produced. So it won't stop here. So as we come to the end of the consultation process, we completely intend to involve the pre-qual providers in helping us work up this solution to make it something really good, because what the pre-qual providers bring to the table is years of experience of doing this. So they do know what good looks like as a collective. We just need to work together to get a consistent view of what good looks like.
Talk to the next one, Tom.
And so the next question's from Mark, and said that Mark works in civil construction, has to pre-qual with each council they choose to work with. Our local government New Zealand on board with this idea of a standardisation of pre-qual. Again, I can't talk for the whole of local government New Zealand, although we have spoken to a large number of local governments who are very much on board with this approach, and they think that this will make it easier for them. So absolutely, the objective of this project is to get consistency amongst all procurers of construction, which would include all of local government. So that is definitely the intent. And the indications we've had from parts of local government we've spoken to has been really positive.
I think Mark's second question down there, he's got a follow-up question, so it's probably just worth answering at the same time before we go back to Chris.
So are the government willing to legislate that government agencies and local government use the standardisation of pre-qual and hence saving private enterprise time and money?
So I don't think they can legislate at the moment. So what I understand is that the way all government departments work is pretty much under the purview of their relevant CEOs. Having said that, we were talking to somebody from the industry, the Treasury, the ITU, Information Treasury Unit.
Oh, right.
Yep. And they were saying that they make some, and they're part of the construction accord as well. So they make policy recommendations to government and government departments, both at local and central. And basically, there will be some strong influence in there. If a government department didn't follow a Treasury protocol or suggestion here, there would be questions about why. That's the way. But I don't believe, and I'm not an expert in this situation at all, what legislation they could enact to make individual departments do this. Interesting question, though.
Yeah, I'm not certain either. What I do know, though, Mark, just to add so I'm sitting on a group that is providing a document for all of government. So working with the government health and safety lead to produce a document for procurement people in government to help them leverage health and safety. So it's health and safety and procurement for government, and our project and scheme is mentioned within that document and is advising government procurement people to consider that as part of their approach. So that's something that's coming out very shortly. So we should see some change almost immediately.
Yeah, and maybe take the next one here, John. It's a question about ISNet.
It's from Chris. Hi, Chris. So of the current pre-qual providers, ISN offers tools beyond just pre-qual and into support for onboarding and monitoring of contractors. How will this work with Tōtika, where buyers may want to specify ISN for the later stages? So I think that's really split into two parts there, Chris, is that if you're using an outsourced contractor management supplier who, as part of that service, provides you with pre-qualification, that pre-qualification element will need to work with Tōtika in terms of that provider will need to recognize other pre-qualifications and work with our industry scheme. That shouldn't affect the ability for organizations to make decisions that we can't get in the way of. If you want to make a commercial decision about using a supplier for different services for your businesses, why should that be a problem? And it should be a conversation that you have with that commercial provider about how they're going to work with the industry scheme. That's going to be the important.
So pre-qual's just a module of ISNet, isn't it?
Yeah, so they provide
modular. We should be able to plug in other pre-quals.
You would hope so.
Yeah.
So that's something you'd have to take up directly with the supplier, Chris. So I think we've hit the end of the questions, unless anyone's got anything else burning they wish to know.
Step on chat here.
Oh, we've got something that's come through the chat.
Will the presentation be available to participants after the session? More than happy to have the presentation available either on LinkedIn or our website, or for everybody actually that's listed on here, we can send it out. That's no problem.
Yep.
And I guess the other thing though is, look, if you do go onto the Tōtika webpage, there is a wealth of information on there as well around this. So we really would encourage you to go to CHASNZ.org and into the Tōtika page, and at any stage, obviously, get in touch with John or myself around this as well. So there's no need to follow all the forms if you don't want to. You can just send us an email. It's equally relevant.
Yep, our email addresses are really easy to guess. It's our first name, so I'm John, Jon, and obviously Chris is easier to spell, at CHASNZ.org. So that's our email addresses.
And Mel's just putting those up there.
And so if you look at the chat part, Mel's just posted our web address and our email addresses for you, so you can grab those.
So really that's it, folks. Thanks a lot for listening to us and giving us your attention for the last 45 minutes, and look forward to the next session. We'll have to decide what the next topic is. Hopefully it's something a bit more towards the stars, I think. So yeah, we'll get past pre-qual.
We'll figure something out that's a little bit more entertaining.
Cheers.